Hello everybody and welcome in. My name is Ashley Ornelas and this is my summary and recommendation report for Read 516. Alright, so for my summary of formal and assessment data, I kind of took this screenshot from our report. From what I noticed just overall, my student Gabriella Schwing is on par for the instructional or near middle school levels. Specifically, I noticed a large range between the 6th and 7th grade levels rather than the 8th grade levels. When looking at the student's strengths, I did notice that the student was strong in their speaking and listening skills, right? They're fully fluent in English and Spanish, so very strong, perfect skills for that. Their writing, also very clear, definitely need a little bit more help in sentence structure, but for what I was assessing, they had a strong area. I also put determination on there. While it's not a specific area of literacy that we look for, I definitely noticed that across the board, the student was able to continuously be determined in whatever they were reading to try and at least finish it. So, always an area of strength. Additionally, areas of need based on what I noticed, while I didn't test for it, it actually came up continuously. But the student needed some assistance in fluency, reading fluency specifically, especially as they were reading out loud and stumbling on words, specifically through phonics, and reading comprehension as well. While they did score fairly well on it, instructional, I noticed that their reading comprehension was based on big ideas. When it came to recollecting small details, they would pause and be stuck. So I noticed that that was a pattern or an area of need the student may need. So from this data came my instructional target. I wrote it in my fieldwork report 4, and I kind of have been using it since. My specific learning goal for the student at first was to increase the student's phonemic and comprehensive understanding of multisyllabic words through interactive word activities and targeted lessons. I wanted to increase student reading comprehension with a goal of 80% accuracy with 3 to 4 concrete details recalled through plot-based lessons as measured through assessment forms similar to QRI. While this was my initial goal and what I was working towards, what I ended up actually sticking with the most was this. Because I noticed that it was harder to get to reading comprehension when my student could not physically pronounce the word or understand what the meaning of the word was, or even how to break down the word, those prefix, root, and suffix strategies. So I ended up reverting back to this, and I'll address it later, but would have been more specific with this goal in hindsight. So what did I try? And I kind of just touched on that. I noticed, first of all, their social identity. They're raised in a double language household, Spanish and English, so it kind of helped me quite a bit by connecting with the student using my own native Spanish, speaking to her, buenos dias, Gabriela, ¿cómo estás? Ready for today? Lista? You got this? Let's do it, champ. That type of language, that duality made her very comfortable. Some accommodations I made were making icebreakers that are both in English and Spanish, tapping into my Hispanic heritage for her, even applying some reading passages that we did where English and Spanish were interesting to her. I also tried to include other social markers like her age, her grade, her gender, her social interests, right? She is a young 15-year-old young lady. She's in 9th grade, a freshman, a very transitional year. She's a young lady, so her interests are keen to those areas, and I tried to make sure that I was connecting with the student in that way. Or the fact that she's very interested in drama. These are social markers that I incorporated in the reading, or at least in these sessions with the student. Some activities to work towards our instructional goals were having root word practices, multisyllabic reviews, and reading out loud for fluency practice. So rather than that complete reading comprehension component, now I was aiming for just letting her practice saying the words out loud. By giving her a constant structure of practice over and over, I noticed that the student was able to have some form of growth. And I also kind of took to heart what Mocha Hatari said, in that assessment data is not just isolated and decontextualized snapshots of a student's performance. Really, assessment is a reflection of those who have daily interactions with the students. And I did see some of this growth, and I'll talk about it in just a second. So what did the progress monitoring data show? From this, it showed that while the student met their specific goal of reading fluency through multisyllabic words, their assessments didn't actually show this growth. It was kind of shocking. The final words their way spelling showed a 14 out of 31, which is not passing. I believe that's intensive. Their San Diego Quick showed instructional, and their core vocabulary forms also showed that the student was at an intensive level for 8th grade words. So overall, actually, yes, she is intensive also for the core vocabulary. So overall, the student didn't really show any growth. It actually stagnated. It is better than initial participation, but there were no growth. Although I administered a wide set of assessments, I did that so that I could see what did her reading fluency, her vocabulary, and her phonics look like after doing a multisyllabic word kind of boot camp for her. I think this goes back to my goal. I could have narrowed it down to her needs. I could have been more intentional with the exact student skills where I probably could have reached out to Dr. Gomez, maybe seen if I could find a few more assessments that were a little bit more keen to the multisyllabic words, the reading fluency, the phonics that I actually ended up looking towards. Another small factor I noticed was that over the time, the student did become more comfortable in session, but kind of lacked the motivation to read for the specific session. While they always labeled themselves a reader, I didn't exactly see this motivation maybe transfer into some of the assessments. Rightly so, these assessments are not always the most interactive for students. So I think that's something that I kind of recognize now as an educator looking back, and this might have shown itself in the data without me really realizing it. Lastly, some future considerations. I understand that students' capabilities go far and wide, and that data is just that snapshot. I'm only looking at a certain moment of my students' ability. When looking at their growth, I kind of can see what the progress would be, but that doesn't always reflect itself. I think moving forward, this aligns me to why it's important to have a very clear lesson target or objective for the student to understand, and as well as how I can provide an accessible or equitable education where I'm actually really looking into the needs of the student. I feel as though this whole session, these 8 sessions, have really given me an insight to what exactly are the needs of my student and what are they bringing to the table in terms of literacy. From here, I can start to actually build and create an equitable classroom. That was my summary and recommendation report. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and have a great rest of your day.